Sorry? All right, do we have most of our councillors here? I'm sure the rest will join us shortly.
We have quorum.
We have quorum, so let's get this rolling. And I would like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting for the Township of Georgian Bay to order at 1:34 p.m. For anyone who may be watching us on our live stream and thought this meeting started at 1, our apologies to you, but I'm afraid our meetings of this morning ran a little longer than we originally anticipated, but I think they were well worth completing, and therefore we've delayed the start of this meeting until now. In the spirit of reconciliation, we wish to acknowledge the enduring relationship between Indigenous peoples and the territories they traditionally occupied. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection they have to this place, the land, the water, and the sky, and all that live on, in, above it, under it. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of Indigenous people who have taken care of this land and who continue to care for it. And we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today. May they guide our decisions and our actions. We commit to learn, to educate, to honor sacred places, and to take action towards real truth and reconciliation. Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest or anything along that line? All right, seeing none. And before I go, and I understand there's no one has applied for the open forum. Councillor Bocek, I did see your hand earlier. Was there something you wanted to say before we get into the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I've requested that an item be added to the agenda under new business through our clerk, and I just know that at the beginning of meetings, we're supposed to address the mayor to allow the addition.
Would that be in regard to Marina and launch ramp signage?
Yes.
Good, then I can assure you she got the message and she passed it to me and I'm about to say it.
Thank you.
So my first resolution, be it moved by Councillor Wienkel, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Yes, I see both here. Good. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole adopts agenda of January 11th, 2022, as amended to include item 8B, Marina and launch ramp signage. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Okay. So now I believe the first item on our agenda is a staff report in regards to the proposed noise bylaw amendments. And I'm going to presume that Ms. King is going to present that because I see her name on the report. Ms.
Yes.
King?
Sorry, yes, good morning, Committee of the Whole. I'm going to just start, and I have a couple things written to get through. So if at any time you have any questions or concerns, you can feel free to stop me because it's got a couple pages in front of me here. So as the report says, we're dealing with a couple different things that are brought up. So the first that I want to talk to is about the restrictions on human noise. So as mentioned in previous reports, our bylaw, current bylaw, mirrors the bylaws in the townships that surround us. I looked at 10 other municipalities that surround us to look at their bylaws, and it's the same or very similar. So I just wanted to clarify, because I know staff and council have received quite a few emails from concerned residents in regards to this section in this report. So I just wanted to clarify why I chose the municipalities that I did, because quite a few residents were thinking that we should look at other towns as well. So the towns that they were listed were Lambton Shores, Wasaga Beach, Collingwood, and Kawartha Lakes, as well as Tiny. I did look at Tiny because they are a near neighboring municipality to us. So I can see how these municipalities are similar to us, as they do have a large seasonal influx of residents and visitors who come to their areas. However, these places are a bit different from us because their permanent populations vary from 10,000 to 75,000 people, and they have a complement of bylaw officers that range from 10 officers to 14. So there's quite a difference in staffing. So we are comparable in that we are a summer season town type, but we are quite a bit smaller than them. So when I looked at the municipalities surrounding us, they are similar size, similar staffed, and they're similar geographical locations. So I just wanted to clarify that's why I looked at them and not these other ones listed. So I would suggest that stay the same, but that's what we're here to talk about as well today from the committee if they wish to change that. The next part of this report, we have the proposed bylaw amendment for the golf course. We've talked about that a couple times. I don't think there's any concerns with it. I just wanted to make sure because it's in there. So the next one is construction noise on Sundays. I wanted to get give committees some options for this, because that's what, the other ones around us, these are what other people are doing to change and differ from what we are currently doing. So we can have a start time of 10 a.m. or 12 p.m. with an end time of 6, or ban construction on Sundays. Staff and council has received several emails with a request that construction be banned on Sundays. If this is the committee's wish, staff do suggest that we have a public meeting to ensure that the community is made aware of these changes and provide the opportunity for input before finalizing a bylaw. I would also suggest that that is something that we do, that I work with the sustainability to put out information so that it's made well aware, because that would be a pretty big change. The other parts of this and the emails that we received is that we received some other concerns or suggestions, and I just wanted to address those so that we know, the residents know that we hear them. One of these suggestions was a setback of 15 to 25 feet from a property line, and that human noise or noise could not be audible at that point of reception from the property line. Although this is an interesting concept, I would like to point out my concerns with this. So depending on how one would word this section of a bylaw, an officer or complainant would then have to prove that setback to lay a charge. So let's say Mr. Cooper is having a get together and they're getting a little too loud. If that stipulation was in there, his neighbor or complainant or an officer would have to go out and find the property line, which often aren't identified, and approximately measure from that property line 15 to 25 feet, and then collect evidence from that point to prove that the bylaw has been broken. This isn't practical for officers or complainants to ask them to do that, especially in water access only properties that are in the middle of the night like that. We're not going to be able to get people to do that. And in order to prove that, you would need that evidence, obviously, to make sure that that happens. So when bylaws are more specific, like having those setbacks, it actually limits the enforcement capability, where in a situation where our current bylaw is, someone could call me and say, Mr. Cooper's having a very large party, collect evidence, and then I could lay a charge, versus having to prove that 15 to 25 feet. So that would be my concern with that suggestion. Another concern that ratepayers have identified in emails received by staff and by council is that noise from power boats or boats in their bays. There was a suggestion to developing noise levels on the lakes. This would be a big challenge for staff. Practically, it would be pretty hard to enforce. I know lots of the bigger municipalities have decibel readers. That's a whole other ball game that we haven't really got into at this point, and for reason. And I feel like there might be legal challenges to the boats if they're not, they're just boating by. I don't think we can stop them from doing that. There is a stipulation in our noise bylaw currently that if a combustion engine doesn't have an effective exhaust or an intake muffling device, we can do something about that. So if a boat was modified to be made louder, then that's something we can address with the bylaw we currently have. I understand this, these situations can be a nuisance for sure. I just don't see a practical way of changing that or enforcing that. The last part that is in my report here is we had the suggestion from Cal last month about the gas-powered lawn equipment ban. So as mentioned in the report, this is not a common practice in Ontario. I did dig up and I called everyone that I could find online to get more information from them. I feel like this may be something we choose to monitor. And if there are more viable options or solutions in the future, then that could be something we consider at that time. But I just don't think there's enough information for us to make that decision, especially being such a small municipality, because it seems to be only large cities that are considering it. And yeah, I think that's everything that I had. I hope that explains my thoughts and process as to why I wrote the report the way I did, and I hope to address some concerns of the residents. But if there's anything I missed, please point it out to me.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. King. I think you did quite a thorough job of explaining where you're coming from, but I don't doubt for a moment we'll have councillors with some questions, not the least which we're going to start with Councillor Bocek, followed by Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not in line with this method of thinking at all. If I happen to go to the lake house on the weekend and it rains Saturday and I want to fix my dock on Sunday and hammer some nails in, or if I'm at home and I want to fix my pool deck and I'm hammering, the neighbors can call, or if the grandkids or nieces and nephews are over playing in the pool and it's too loud, my neighbor, you know what? We need to rely on people's common sense. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have it, but laws after laws after laws after laws, I've just inundated with them. So I won't be supporting any part of this. Thank you.
Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you, Mayor Kutsier. And Karina, I'll start off with thanking you for doing an excellent customer service job of actually acknowledging all the letters that came in. This is the first time I've ever seen that from the township, and this is wonderful. So thank you for that. One of the things that I did in trying to prepare for today, in addition to wanting to support my constituents, is I went back to and watched the video of our November meeting. And what I was pleased to revisit and see is that all councillors, sadly, Councillor Bocek was not there, or I didn't make any notes about his comments, but all other councillors were supportive of the concept that we do have noise problems in Honey Harbor. Maybe they are point problems and not township-wide, but all councillors seem to be very understanding of the fact that we quite likely have these problems and we likely need to do something about them. So thank you for that from our November meeting. I know we're in a new meeting today, and it'll be interesting to see what comments come forward. But what I would like to point out is this. We've already heard Councillor Bocek say that there are some people that don't have common sense. And sadly, I know you can't legislate common sense, but there are serious problems with common sense. And I had the pleasure of talking to one cottager who actually has a cottage right opposite Mayor Kutsier's cottage. And I asked him about the noise bylaw and concerns, and he says, we don't have those problems. We're all considerate to our neighbors. And I thought, wow, because we have cottagers, for example, who have told me that they've gone to their neighbor's place to ask them to be considerate, and the neighbors have said, step on my property again, I'll take you out. So clearly this issue is not purely common sense. So then I started thinking, okay, well, what other examples do we have in our township of attempting to legislate common sense? And I'm going to highlight what we've learned from Cody Avery. He was championing the dark sky lighting situation. And what we learned was we passed a bylaw for dark sky lighting quite a while ago, and that bylaw set some common sense standards. And we lived with that for a while, and Cody went out and he would talk to people, and he would basically find the people that were receptive and cooperative, and then he would find the bad actors. And what happened was we as a council came back and said, okay, we got too many bad actors out there. We need to tighten up the wording in this common sense bylaw so that we can actually enforce it. And so what I think we need to do here is we need to craft a bylaw that helps people understand what common sense and courtesy is. And I think we can do that without having to worry about enforcing it, just like we did with the dark sky lighting bylaw. We crafted a bylaw that we really couldn't afford to defend in court, but it set expectations and standards. And what we are hearing from the community is all kinds of reasonable, common sense recommendations. And I know they may sound a little frivolous, if somebody's making noise and over feet from my property, is that going to be easily defended and enforced? No. But does it set an expectation of common sense? Yes. And so I am fully supportive of finding ways of reflecting the community's input, which happens to be very consistent, by the way. And so I would like to see us find a way to craft a noise bylaw amendment that would reflect the kinds of things that our community are asking for, recognizing we may not put special wording in there that makes it truly enforceable, but if it is sending a message of what common sense expectations are, then I think we've accomplished our goal. Now, the other thing that I just want to be clear on one thing. Although the comments that have come in from the community, when they talk about construction noise, I don't want to be seen as speaking on their behalf necessarily, or putting words in their mouth. But I think what they're really looking at is major equipment, large equipment, construction equipment noise, as opposed to construction noise. So if somebody's out working on, redoing a roof, I don't think anybody's going to be really concerned about that. But it's when people are out there with large equipment and they've got the backup beepers going and on and on and on. I think when they talk about construction noise, and again, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think that's what they're saying, that they're trying to find a way to bring some common sense to this large equipment construction noise on Sunday. Now, what I find interesting is we've also had feedback from one of the families of one of the biggest construction companies in the township, and they have suggested we don't need construction on Sundays at all. In fact, they tell us that most of their people don't want to work on weekends. They only work Monday to Friday. So before I get cut off by our mayor for talking too long, I'll just pause there and ask that you consider my comments. Thank you.
Well done, Councillor Hazelton, because you were getting close to that point, right? Very well done. You'll be followed by Councillor Wienko and Cooper.
Yeah, one of the points that Councillor Hazelton brought up, and I'll agree with him, is that we needed to find out we have to define what we mean by construction. And I do agree that it's really the noisy, the backhoes and the beeping and all that, and the heavy machinery. I think I would support a ban on that on Sunday, but activity around the house, cutting the lawn or maybe running a chainsaw or just doing the odd jobs around the house, hammering, I can't see banning that on a Sunday. So I think if we define the word what type of construction that we mean on a Sunday, I think we could probably come together on a resolution on that. So I would suggest you work on that. The other two things, yeah, I guess I was the one that brought up the idea about banning gas-powered equipment. I agree with you. There's not a big call for that right now, but I think you need to monitor that, and maybe in 10 years from now, and that might be something that we want to include in our bylaw. And the last issue I want to get clarification on is noise from boats, either modified mufflers or noise from the speed boats and so on. I didn't think the township had any jurisdiction on that. I thought that was a Ministry of Transport issue. Can you clarify that we do or do not have any authority on noise related to watercraft?
Through your chair, I don't believe we do have any authority to change that. In the email too, there was concerns about shoreline destruction and speed and other things as well. And it was acknowledged that that's obviously not all a bylaw issue or a noise issue. It was just something I thought I should bring forward because it was in the emails.
All right. Okay, thank you. We have Councillor Cooper now, please.
Thank you, Mayor Kutzier, and thank you, Corinne, for your report. I'd like to know how many complaints you've heard about the noise I'm having at my place, the parties. Just kidding. It was another Cooper, wasn't it? My brother, never mind. Just all joking aside, I wanted to raise the same issue with respect to construction equipment noise versus the use of, I'll call them hand tools, but they may be gas-powered tools too. But essentially, I don't see any reason why we can't sort of find a way, some verbiage to make a distinction between heavy equipment, heavy construction equipment versus hand tools being used in the broadest sense of hand tools being used by our constituents. So I think those are a very clear distinction. And when we were talking about in the last time about this, the construction equipment was part of it was within the community of Honey Harbor. There was one contractor apparently who was using very heavy equipment with a scoop on it and scraping across on barges, making massive noises. And no little wonder that people would be upset about that. It's terrible amount of noise. So I think that needs to be dealt with, and I think it's worthy of dealing with. So I'd like to support that. And so we need to be able to go out into Georgian Bay, anywhere in our township, and enjoy some peace and quiet, and not just on Sundays. We need to be hopefully using common sense and frankly behaving well with our neighbors. And I think by setting some standards here, we will help people that aren't so aware of their activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Douglas, followed by Councillor Jarvis, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coetzee. Thank you, Karina, for your report. The only thing I'd like to, I also would like to see some wording in there about large equipment only on Sundays. I actually don't, I think that would be the rarity. I don't know many construction companies that work on Sundays. That would be the rarity. So I don't see a problem with putting heavy equipment in there, but any other equipment, most cottagers and seasonal people, if they're only available on the weekends and they do their own work and build docks and that, they need to be able to use small equipment and nails and hammers and things. And I think that's not reasonable to even consider trying to stop that. The one thing that I would like to see some verbiage on is leaf blowers. I think that that is one of the most annoying things that I have had complaints on is people who use their leaf blowers to excess hours and hours on Saturdays and Sundays. I think that's one of the only things I hear about complaints on as far as noise goes. I haven't really heard much about parties or anything other than that, but I would like to see some restrictions on that. I mean, I don't think you should stop people from using them because again, most cottagers, if we want to talk about cottagers or other, only have the weekends to do certain work. But to have a leaf blower start at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday or 7:30, I think is very unfair to neighbors. And I think common sense sometimes does not prevail. Certainly I know of a number of situations too, in particular, that's been an ongoing problem, despite the fact that all the neighbors have spoken to them. So I think it would be good to have something in place, and common sense does step in with most people, but for those who just don't have the common sense and don't care what their neighbors say, I think there should be something in place that, you know, we can act on. Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis.
Yes, and again, I'll echo other councillors. Thank you for the report, Karina. Appreciate this. Can you remind me, do we have a definition of construction noise somewhere in our bylaws?
Yes, we do. So we have construction and construction equipment that are two separate things. The construction equipment that includes it's a long definition, so I'll just give you Cole's notes, but it has hand tools, power tools, and that goes into tractors, excavators, trenchers, cranes, like a very long list. And then construction includes any alteration, repair, dismantling, demolition, et cetera, with that equipment. So in order to change that, we would have to look at changing the definitions of like making two construction equipments. To Ms. Cynthia as well, like to Ms. Douglas, there is something about in the back here in the schedule, the operation of any powered or non-powered tool for domestic purposes other than snow removal. So that would be your leaf blowers. So right now they're allowed from 7 a.m. till 11 p.m., which is late. But we could change those times because there is an option to have it even from 7 a.m. Monday to Saturday to 9, and then we could have it 9 a.m. on Sunday. So that's just another option that we can quickly look at the top of my head here.
So I would suggest, just as a follow-up, that we perhaps we may have to change our definitions and go with construction equipment versus heavy construction equipment, perhaps, and ban the use of heavy construction equipment as opposed to the smaller stuff that everybody's been talking about here so far. I'm very sympathetic to the cause here. I have bad hearing anyway, so it doesn't affect me that much. Councilor Cooper's had numerous parties. I haven't heard a thing. So, and being in an island, it's a little bit more remote. So it's not quite as big an issue as it's going to be in the more urban type settings, such as Honey Harbor, MacTier, Severn, and in the areas where things are a little more close. So I'm really sympathetic. Having seen all that correspondence, I'm really leaning to the idea of banning heavy construction noise, period, on Sundays. Makes a lot of sense. If we can work around the definition of construction noise itself. Those are my comments. I thought it was interesting to hear Councillor Douglas's comments about leaf blowers. I've always had a bee in my bonnet about them anyway, but I don't know how we can just sideline them as an item by themselves, but it'd be interesting to see what we can do with that. Anyway, again, thanks for the report, Karina.
All right, thank you. I'll make a couple comments before Councillor Bochek leads off round two. I think, I believe it was Councillor Hazelton first brought up the idea of common sense, and I often think of it just being good neighbors. And I think actually in the Bay where my cottage is, Councillor Hazelton, most of the folks are good neighbors. I'm quite impressed by the ones who like to have parties every weekend. I'd say you could set your clock to the 11 o'clock, they turn it down. To the best of my knowledge, no neighbors have talked to them about turning it down. They just do it themselves. I've always wondered about leaf blowers when you're trying to get back to nature in our area. For those who are cottagers, why do you want to blow the leaves around? I mean, nature just takes care of that. You don't have to worry about it, but there you go. Different people have different tastes. But I do think Councillor Hazelton sets a reasonable suggestion that bylaws are guidelines much more than they are enforcement documents, in the sense that the enforcement is we can't enforce everybody following every bylaw all the time because we just don't have the resources to do that. But we're setting expectations. We're helping people be good neighbors by how most people would define what being a good neighbor is. And that I think that unfortunately, we're always going to have some individuals who don't really care about their neighbors, and therefore we need to give them some guidelines to assist them. I will admit to being a bit torn about the construction noise, in that my experience with construction noise is often you'll find somebody renovating their place, and it's a project that may last one summer, but then hopefully the next summer it's not there again. I remember a year or two ago, we heard complaints about one individual whose hobby seemed to be making lots of noise on the weekends, and people are getting tired of that. I hate telling people what they can and can't do, but unfortunately, I'm also of the opinion that some people need a little guidance in how to be a good neighbor. And Councillor Bochek may disagree with me, but I'm going to give him the opportunity to speak now.
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of points here. I'm wondering if this is something that we should not include in the waterfront review. This seems to be a problem with seasonal residents or cottagers. Seems to be a waterfront issue. I can tell you this Sunday, I will be loading up dump trucks and backhoes and excavators and front end loaders to go to work on Monday at my construction yard in Port Severn. There's a lot of noise that we'll be making when we load up all this equipment to head over to Penetang on Monday morning to go to work. I really think a lot of thought needs to be put behind this. And to me, everything I've heard has been waterfront related, cottage related, weekend warrior related. We have an economic engine here that runs and needs to run. And if these bylaws were to put into place, it'll hurt a lot of people. Now, understandably, that if you have a construction yard that's on a waterfront property, be quiet on Sundays. You know, don't make the noise. But if you're in the shipping yard up at MacTier at the CP rail station, or you're transporting telephone poles out of MacTier on a Sunday, or we're loading equipment here, this bylaw is going to kill that. So I want to be really, really careful moving forward. I would like to see this whole thing put in with our Director of Developmental Services in his study on the waterfront study, and see if maybe it can be included in that. But just a blanket, don't make noise from heavy construction equipment on Sundays for the entire township. God, I hope you don't need a pothole fixed.
All right, thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. I don't have too many potholes. Thank you, Brian, but not many leaves either. Sorry, but I wanted to say that, you know, I think we need to identify the most egregious things in some way that it's reasonable and fair. So let me give an example. Gas-powered leaf blowers, gas-powered chainsaws are both very noisy. But leaf blowers that aren't gas powered are much quieter. So, you know, where do we go with this kind of equipment? I suggest that, you know, we need to be careful when we sort of point at one piece of equipment and not another. I think our weekend warriors should be allowed to use hand tools and small power tools, etc. But very, very noisy gas-powered equipment can be annoying, and I appreciate that, and I'm thankful we don't have many leaves. But I would also like to say that in construction equipment, I think what Councillor Bochek is saying merits some real consideration, because the truth of the matter is the complaints I've heard about construction equipment is with large construction companies on the waterfront, in particular in Honey Harbor, and particular from many of the permanent residents, including seasonal, but many permanent residents who have said, can you stop the banging, please? And all the scraping and so forth on Sundays. And that I have a lot of sympathy for. So I think there may be a way to work around some of this. And that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Before I go to Councillor Hazelton, I want to let the staff, I see Dr. Espilla has raised his hand, and Chief Van Dam is showing up. So let's go to them first. Dr. Espilla, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Coutier. Just like to address the comment from Councillor Bochek. Earlier today, Planning Council passed a resolution with respect to the terms of reference for the waterfront study review. In the report, the direction from the council resolution back on April 12th, 2021 it specifically addressed a study of land use policies inclusive of the official plan and zoning bylaw related to or relevant to waterfront, lakeside, shoreline, or development. So that's going to be a separate matter rather than the discussion that we're undertaking with the current item on the agenda for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Van Dam.
Good afternoon. I just want to, we've heard some comments that says we should create the bylaw just to help curve people and use it as an informational tool. I just want to caution you, last council, we had the same discussion about bylaws. Bylaws are there to be enforced. If we don't enforce them, that makes the municipality liable. So if we're planning to make a bylaw to educate people, that's part of our enforcement policies. However, the bylaw's there and creates that liability that we need to enforce it if it comes down to it. So just to say that we want to create a bylaw to help curve people's common sense, I'm not recommending that you do that. If you're looking to solve the problem and deal with it, then okay, we'll create the bylaw for enforcement, whether it's enforcement through education at the beginning and gradually working up to fines and courts, that's fine. But we have to be prepared that that's what you're going to do, not just for to try to curve common sense.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Hazelton, please.
Yes, so notwithstanding what Tony just shared with us, we have an example where our dark sky lighting was exactly, was completely different from what we just heard. The dark sky lighting was created. It was not enforceable. Perhaps we learned that after the fact, but we learned very quickly that it was not enforceable, and it had to come back and have significant changes made to it before it was enforceable. So I think that we have a precedent at the township for having bylaws that help with directional common sense direction, setting expectations. And if the enforcement is education by a bylaw enforcement officer going up to a property to help specifically educate somebody who doesn't have common sense, then I think we should be certainly embracing that idea. We've already had that idea. I think we just need to continue it. Pivoting a little bit, I think if I heard Karina correctly, she talked about construction equipment, and I'm kind of thinking that if construction equipment had perhaps either two definitions or perhaps from a noise perspective, if we just said construction equipment is banned, so construction equipment excluding hand tools, that I think would leave everything else in the large equipment category. And that would, I think, probably cover what we're trying to get at here. But maybe there's more crafting and wordsmithing needed. I certainly, first of all, thank you, Councillor Bocek, for bringing forward. I don't live inland and I don't think about your issues and I don't think about your potholes. And to Councillor Cooper's point, he doesn't have any potholes and neither do I, but I in no way, not for a second, would I want to constrain the kinds of activities that you're talking about. So, you know, we heard in the November meeting, there were a lot of sympathies and people saying, well, maybe this is a point solution for Honey Harbor. Maybe it's not Honey Harbor, maybe it's waterfront or the hamlet, whatever. You know, there may be some other definitions that need to be flushed out there because we do not, I do not, I'm sure the community do not want to negatively impact the examples that Councillor Bocek brought forward. So I think that is excellent to make sure that we have that bigger picture there. And I guess what else I'd like to just highlight here is the community not only brought forward ideas of identifying noise and number of feet or meters from a property line, they also talked about more common sense ideas of noise. So perhaps instead of noise being 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., maybe we constrain noise to, you know, 8 o'clock to 9 p.m. or maybe 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. I mean, what we're really getting at here is when people don't have common sense, we need to give them guidelines. And if you had noise constraints between the, for example, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., that's just as easy to enforce as 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. So there's no enforcement difference. So if you wanted to say, hey, this idea of n number of meters from the property line, we really can't enforce that. Well, maybe there's a way of putting those words in there as setting expectations, but recognizing that you only have teeth for these time windows. And apparently we have teeth today for the time window we've got, but what the community is telling us, that time window doesn't make sense. So let's find a way to change that time window to be more reflective of neighborhood respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Van Dam.
I just wanted to alert council that when we're talking about construction equipment, one of the things that's going to become an issue, I've heard it from 2 people already, is our marinas are using, I'm going to say, heavy equipment to remove some boats and all of that. So under the definition of construction equipment, it could be interpreted that they're using heavy equipment to pull out boats, and some of that will be necessary if you have a boat that's got a leak or something to that. So it's when we're coming up with that, just so you're aware that we are trying to look at means to address that, because our marinas are important, and they don't want to, they could have issues if we limited construction equipment. So just so you are aware, we are trying to look at that concern as moving forward as well.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
I think Karina had something to say there. Perhaps.
Sorry?
I think Karina's got her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Karina, because the yellow hand is,
Yeah, there's
there's yellow background there, so it's hard to see. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just had a thought, and to what Mr. Hazelton was saying. I know we are talking about he wants to shorten those windows. I see from the community's perspective as to why they would want to do that, and that would be common sense. I just know that the phone calls and people that I speak
I'm on
to.
a Zoom call. I'm on council Zoom, but
Councillor Wienkel, you're not muted. Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. I just know the complaints that I receive sometimes also aren't made in common sense. You know, like a lot of times bylaws are used when neighbors are having disputes and are not being very reasonable themselves. I know even Brian was saying about the trains in MacTier. You wouldn't believe how many calls I have had complaining about the trains in MacTier when they know it's a village that they, you know, it's in a train community. I know, and another example I just thought of while we were speaking, and it's just food for thought, but Myers Lake, we put in the quiet zone in Myers Lake, I think in 2018. So we put it in there, and we all had this discussion that we didn't want this bylaw to be used to stop children from playing in the water and having fun. We all had that discussion very openly. And we just said that, you know, staff would use their discretion because that wouldn't really stand up in a court that we would charge a child for playing in the water. We didn't think that, you know, we thought, okay, that won't happen. And it has. Like, I've had that complaint before that I've had to deal with. So just, it's a good idea to put in things that are restrictive, but if we are too restrictive, it will cause more work. It will get people upset if we aren't enforcing it because they feel there is an issue, even though the common sense or reasonable person would think, okay, that's just a child playing in the water. But to the person who's reading and interpreting that bylaw, they feel that's a problem. So I just wanted to bring that forward, just something that I see answering the phones and dealing with the enforcement matters here.
Thank you. And I think we can all think of some other examples where we know people take the letter of the law over the, I'll call it the intent of the law, and not just in regard to noise. Councillor Douglas, did you want to say anything? Oh, Councillor Douglas has disappeared for a moment. If she comes back, we'll see if she wants anything. Councillor Jarvis, you have not added anything to this round. I didn't know if you wanted to. And I see that, you know, your hand isn't blinded by the sun behind you, but
no, I have nothing further to comment. This is a difficult issue. The more I hear, the less decided I am on it, which is rather unfortunate, but makes sense. I mean, companies such as Brian's need to be able to do their business. And at the same time, I'm very sympathetic to the fact that people need to have some peace and quiet at least one day of the week, and that would be Sunday. We got to come up with some sort of reasonable approach to this.
It is challenging, and and we've talked about the construction, and Chief Undone brought up the marinas. There are our two biggest employers in the township, and both of them suffer from short seasons. And so I think we have to be a little bit careful in regard to that. And I also have to think we have to. I mean, I know for myself, more than once I've gone down on my dock with a cup of coffee in the morning and want to sit there and relax and just enjoy the loons swimming by and the occasional paddler or something. And all of a sudden somebody starts up their chainsaw or their leaf blower, and I curse. I admit it. But at the same time, when you live in a community with a bunch of people, other people will be doing different things than you're doing. And so we have to also have a little bit of patience, tolerance, acceptance that other people have different clocks and are doing different things. I guess I'm surprised, but not, by the example that Ms. King gave us of people complaining about kids next door swimming. I mean, give me a break. But okay, I could see some people, I've heard before people say, I wish those kids didn't play so loudly. Well, that's what kids do. We have to have some tolerance. Councillor Wanko, did you want to add to the conversation? I wasn't sure if I saw your hand.
Yeah, no, I think we're getting close to a resolution about the Sunday thing. You can have an exclusion for marinas, and you can have exclusion from construction yards. And that would maybe satisfy some of the concerns, but I think we still need to have something for heavy equipment construction, for activities on properties that basically is construction and not just moving equipment around. So I think we can probably define what we mean by construction and exclude yards and marinas and so on.
All right, I think what we have to do now, because all of us, and I'm certainly guilty as well, have made some general comments about noise. What we've heard, the recommendation from Ms. King has been to basically, from her perspective, the current noise bylaw is mostly working. One suggestion that is a possibility is to restrict construction noise, and it could be heavy construction noise if we want to try to restrict the heavy construction noise, either ban it from Sunday or shorter hours on Sunday. And my question to you is now, let's get more specific. What other specific changes do you think could be made to the noise bylaw? Right now it restricts noise to be within 7 in the morning to 11 at night. Do you want to change the hours? I think if we're going to do another round here, we have to be very specific. And then if for instance, Councillor Hazelton proposes that no noise is allowed until noon, then the rest of them can say, well, is that reasonable or not? And we go from there. So that's what I'm asking for now, is being very specific. And I'm going to go Councillor Bocek, followed by Councillor Cooper, please.
I don't know if I can be very specific, but thank you, Mr. Mayor. The one thing that really, I'll get away from the construction side because I have my own interest there, but the 25 foot or meter or yard or whatever noise from the property line, geez, we have dogs that bark. So when my dog goes out and barks, and my neighbor can hear it from 25 feet onto their property, I'm going to get a bylaw officer show up here. I don't know the answer, but I know that a blanket solution like what was put forward this morning, I can't support. And I'll leave it at that. I'll let the other councillors with something valuable to say it.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, please.
Mayor Kutzier, and very briefly, I think we do need some tweaking to our noise bylaw. I'm not sure we've got it nailed down at the moment. I do understand the marine equipment aspect of it, and that makes perfect sense. That's Marina equipment is quite a bit different from front end loaders scraping across barges on Sunday morning. And how do we get verbiage around that? I'm not sure, but I think we're talking about construction, heavy equipment / construction, as opposed to anything else. And so that would be my definition of really problematic. And it's probably, I don't even think that would exclude or apply to what Councillor Bocek is talking about, but he's talking about loading up equipment, not, making all sorts of noises in his yard to clean off this or that for hours on end. That's what I think the Honey Harbor community is telling me about anyway. So I'm sorry, I'm not offering up anything as specific, but as we might like, and maybe we need to keep working on the verbiage, but those are my observations. Thank you.
And are you thinking then heavy equipment on Sunday or just shorter hours on Sunday?
I'd prefer to see it closed down on Sunday myself.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to weigh in? Councillor Hazelton.
Yeah, I think we need to do what Councillor Cooper just said. We need to differentiate between the construction heavy equipment that is really annoying and noise making versus the forklifts that are being used to pull boats out of the water, or tractors, because the tractors that I see, for example, at Nautilus Marina, they are ultra quiet compared to most construction front end loaders and other things that are being used. We have a situation where there is a construction operation, barging operation at Village Marine, the former Village Marine. How it ever came into existence, nobody really knows. Sadly, it now is legal non-conforming. Neighbors in that bay have been complaining about this forever, and now they're faced with obscene noises starting even before 7 a.m. in the morning, and destroying any opportunity for quality of life at their place. And apparently it's all legal. So, having a Sunday where there is no construction other than hand tools, to me would make sense. And maybe we need to put a clause in there that allows marinas with highly muffled forklift trucks to do boat, removal, etc. But again, this is mostly a waterfront issue. This is not and should not impact Councillor Bocek and his kinds of businesses. That's not what anybody's intending here. So that's from a construction noise perspective. I think we need to find a way to craft some wording around that. I kind of sense that there's somewhat consensus on that. But then when it comes to other noise, let's call it human-driven noise, our 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Really is obscene. It's obscene in the sense that it doesn't provide any forum or manner in which people can enjoy any quiet at their property. And so with that in place, and we've had this conversation before, and I'll repeat it again, when you have a bylaw that allows somebody to make as much noise between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. as they want, nobody is going to register a complaint. They're wasting their breath. And yet there are regular complaints and frequent complaints, and we aren't doing anything about it. And so what the community is telling us is, guys, there has to be a different way of crafting your noise bylaw to bring some common sense. Give us a little bit of peace and quiet. Allow Mayor Kutzier to go out and sit on his dock at 7 o'clock in the morning and have an hour of quiet before you make noise. I mean, these are not unreasonable expectations. and yet our noise bylaw doesn't allow for that today. So the community has suggested quiet. Well, they've said you can make noise between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. And that seems like a reasonable next step. Perhaps we also need to entertain this noise at a certain distance from a property line. I personally think that it sets the right expectation, but I also understand that it's going to be an enforcement nightmare for Karina and the team, and I don't want to create a nightmare for her. But again, as we've discussed earlier, we have a dark sky lighting bylaw that set expectations that was not enforceable. And I don't see why we can't entertain the same concept here of setting expectations, even if they may not be enforceable. And thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilor Jarvis.
Yeah, we're talking about good intentions and unintended consequences, seems to be here. And I'm finding myself very much aligned with Councillor Hazelton's thoughts on this. There's got to be a way we can work with the information we've just been sharing around the table here and come up with something that is not 800 pages long, but gives us something to work with. So I really appeal to the crew here that we got to come up with something. And I'd be happy to see no noise on Sunday, though I am, again, sympathetic to the cause for some of the commercial operators, such as illustrated by Councillor Bocek. And I think we can work around that. And of course, any other noise during the day, any construction company, has got to get on job sites pretty early. And to do that, they got to get out of the harbor if they're going out to an island pretty early. So that's a tough one to do anything about. But I still find that we've got to come up with something.
Well, if I may come up with something, we already have a noise bylaw. We just have to decide now whether we're changing some of the parameters on it. Councilor Douglas.
Apologies, I had to step out for a few minutes. So I'm going to glean that this conversation carried on while I was absent. I think that we should work with the bylaw we have, consider what some of the comments Councillor Bocek made, because I don't think we should interrupt business in terms of getting ready for the week, but maybe not working full time on a job. And maybe the marinas have to be considered in that one as well. But I do think it would be good to change our times, maybe on the Saturday and Sundays, from something like 11 till or 9 till 2. So it gives people an opportunity to get up and have an enjoyable, quiet breakfast. And then by 2 o'clock, that's when they start entertaining, usually, or sitting on their docks trying to enjoy their kids. I would think that there's nothing unreasonable about that, 9 to 2 on Saturday and Sunday, or that would be my thought.
Thank you. What I'm hearing, if I may just summarize very quickly, is a couple of things. One is we have this debate about heavy construction equipment on Sunday, and we were offered options of either saying none, and I'm not sure I don't know if we'd get a majority vote on saying no heavy construction equipment on Sunday. So then we have the possibility of restricted hours, and suggested, for instance, was maybe starting at 10 or starting at 12 in the morning, ending by 6. So that's one option. I'll say as is, none, or halfway in the middle. Those are options with heavy construction noise. The other thing that I'm hearing is the possibility of restricting the hours. Right now, generally, our law says that no noise outside of the period of 7 in the morning to 11 at night. I'm not sure it makes any distinction between day of the week. And, do we want to tighten those hours weekdays? Do we want to tighten them on weekends, or maybe further tighten them on 1 or 2 days of the weekend? And we can talk in circles about this whole thing. What Ms. King needs from us, either now or sometime between when she brings this to council, is okay, where are we going to meet that majority of council can agree to modifications to the noise bylaw? Of course, if we make no modifications, by default, the existing bylaw continues. We've heard we had an abundance of correspondence in the last couple of days with regards to this, the noise bylaw. I can't help but notice that almost every one of them was within a few words of everyone else. So it's clearly a small group, and I recognize most of the names, a small group who wanted to make sure that we understood that a portion of our population want to see our world be a little quieter. Don't know to what degree they speak for everyone else. We can only speculate based on what each of us have heard from different residents individually. So we're now stuck. Do we circle the board here and come up with making changes, or do we survey everybody outside of this council meeting so we don't spend hours doing this, and then go back to Ms. King that way? And I'm gonna risk doing a survey, and I want to do this very quickly. And if we don't get anywhere, then I'm just going to stop this, and we can reconsider and maybe do something further in another meeting. But question one, right now, we can start making noise at 7 in the morning every day of the week. Anybody want that to become 8 in the morning every day of the week? Yes, no. If you want it, if you prefer 8, stick your hand up. I got no hands. All right. So let's not change the start hour. Now, next question. 11 o'clock, we can make noise until 11 at night. Does anybody want to reduce that to 9? 1, 2, 3. So we got about a split on that one. Okay. Next question. Sunday. Does anybody want to see restricted hours on Sunday versus the rest of the week on just a straight hours? Okay, so we got a little more. That's the first step. And Ms. King, you're getting a little nervous with all this, so you speak.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. We're talking about human noise right now, right?
Yeah. The
Okay,
construction
good.
is the next question.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anyone
Just wanted to clarify.
Human noise between, like right now, it's 7 to 11 on Sunday. Does anybody think Sunday should have a stronger restriction than the rest of the week? All right, so we got more or less consensus that we're going to do some restriction on Sunday. Good, we're making progress now, believe it or not.
Mayor Kuchar,
Final question.
Could I just insert an idea here?
Yes.
Given the definition of human noise, if the human noise included the use of hand power tools, then I think that would actually be fairly exhaustive, and it would make it easier for us to choose to ban construction equipment, because human noise would then be inclusive of hand power tools, which I think I've heard everybody say they don't want to constrain.
Okay, so the third question is, does anybody want to restrict how many people would like to restrict the hours of heavy construction equipment on Sunday? Okay, so I'm seeing enough hands here that here's where we're at. Councilor Yankel, you want to?
What happened to banning? What happened to banning noise, heavy construction on Sunday?
I consider that part of restricting hours. We'll just have to then decide how much we
I'm
restrict.
in on that, but I'd rather ban it.
All right, so what I've got so far, there didn't seem to be a lot of people who wanted to take the 7 o'clock start on, I'll call it weekdays and Saturday, and push it to 8 or 9. So let's leave 7 alone for now. There's some support for restricting noise from 11. Now it ends at 11. Some say, well, maybe it should be 9. Do you want to compromise at 10? I just want a quick, I'm counting 9 fingers on Councillor Jarvis. I'm seeing, was that 0 or what was that? Councillor Cooper? 9.
9.
Councillor Douglas.
I don't actually see the point of doing anything on Sunday unless we're going to do something substantial, because if you're going to, it's during the day that people are really having an issue on the weekends. So if we're stopping it at 9 or 11 o'clock at night, what's the difference? I don't see any progress in that whatsoever.
right now he's asking for every day but Sunday.
Okay,
Okay, so right now, as a trend, this is not a final answer, but there seems to be an appetite of restricting noise from 7 o'clock in the morning, allowing noise between 7 and 9 weekdays, 6 days of the week. Okay, so basically that's reducing noise by 2 hours weekdays. That's what we're saying. That's one possibility. We can then vote on that. The second one I hear is on Sunday, we're talking about.
Oh, no, what about 10 o'clock? You never asked about 10 o'clock. Do you have a
Okay.
majority for 9?
No, I don't know if I have a majority yet for 9.
Well, I vote for 10 o'clock.
Okay. Now, I guess I'm trying to bring this to a conclusion. I mean, how many wanted to go for 9 roughly? One.
You can count, you can count on me. I don't want any changes to the
Yep.
existing bylaw, so take me out of the formula completely.
Okay, so right now we have 3 at 9. We have 1 at 11. And anybody else for 11 versus, or who would like 10? Okay, well, 2 of us want 10. I got 1 at 11, so I'm missing at least somebody. I can't count here, but Councilor
Me.
Douglas, I don't know what your opinion is on evening restriction weekdays.
well, weekdays, I think 11 o'clock's fine. I don't see a problem with that. It's the weekends that I think people are trying to enjoy their cottages, to be honest with you.
Okay, so if we were going to go for a compromise, we'd go for 10 o'clock because I have 3 at 9, 2 at 10, and 2 at 11.
Mayor Coetzee.
Just saying, yes.
So I think what we're also faced with here is, other than you, the 3 inland councilors are less interested in more constraints of noise, whereas the Bay have spoken fairly strongly that they would like to have more constraints. And I'm wondering, maybe because there are kind of socialization differences between the type of properties on the inland lakes and the Bay, perhaps we should be splitting this into a Ward 2-4 and a Ward 1-3 and allowing Wards 2-4 to have some more constraints and be treated a little bit differently to reflect what the community is interested in, as opposed to having their interests washed out by other communities that are different.
I'd be very hesitant to go down that road. Councilor Rienko.
I tried that ploy with the fireworks and got shot down when I wanted to have fireworks anytime, and you guys shot me down if I said Ward 1 and 3. So I think it goes both ways. So it has to be the whole township.
Okay. My next little quick survey, Sunday hours. And now I'm talking human noise now, not the heavy construction equipment, but everything, we'll call it everything else. Councilor Bocek.
Quick question, Mr. Mayor. Is there a reason we're looking at Sunday? Most of our seasonal residents or tourists come up Saturday and Sunday. And I know that historically Christian beliefs say that Sunday is a Sabbath and it's a day to be quiet and not work, but we're not all Christians, and Sunday is not a deal anymore. And I think, even though I'm not going to support this, I don't know why everybody's not talking Saturday and Sunday. I don't know why you picked on Sunday.
Just because I've heard that from a lot of people. That's the reason.
No, not directed at you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering, I have constituents that are Jewish, that are Buddhists, that are Muslims. They don't recognize Sunday as being anything special. They know it is to the Christian population, but the weekend is when everybody comes up from the city. Our population this summer goes from nothing to everything on Saturdays and Sundays. So why are you picking on Sunday? Why don't you take both of them? If we're going to make a law change, it would be to both days.
All right.
That's just my comments. I'll let you fly.
Councilor Douglas, followed by Councilor Cooper.
Okay, I only have concerns, to be honest with you, and all I've heard from the lake communities and the inland aspect is Saturdays and Sundays. The rest of the bylaw, as far as I'm concerned, could stay the same. I don't see any reason that we need to change any of that. But Saturday and Sunday seems to be the big thing and Councilor Bochek is absolutely right. And I think we need to make accommodations for some business items such as the marinas, and as Councilor Bochek pointed out, loading of machinery to get to the job for the week, because that makes sense. But the Saturday and Sunday thing, to have somebody starting at 7 in the morning and whatever, leaf blowing, just going at it until 7 or 8 o'clock at night is just such a disruption for people that come up to enjoy their cottage. Those are the 2 days that I have some issues that I think we should restrict a little bit, not immensely, because people have only got those 2 days sometimes to work, but you have the bad actors. And I think with the education, you're going to find that there's only going to be a handful of people that need to be spoken to, and that'll probably put an end to it. But at least our fire chief has, or our enforcement has, the teeth to do something about it should they have to.
So if I may, Ms. Douglas, just one thing. Are you suggesting, say, 9 to 6 for both Saturday and Sunday? Pick hours for me.
I would say 11 to maybe 11 to 2.
11 to 2 are the noise
Or
hours?
11 to 4, even 11 or 10 to 4 or something, People want to enjoy their mornings and their afternoons with their kids, basically, is what I'm hearing.
So you're suggesting restricting noise between 10 and 4 on Saturday and Sunday?
Something like that would be fine.
Okay, Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, I think depends on what we're talking about here. Once again, what you're using and what you're not using, and our constituents using hand tools, whether they're manual or electric tools. I'm not sure that we really want to make our lives that miserable that we're talking. I mean, miserable in the sense of trying to enforce anything. Anything different weekday or weekends, and especially when we're now saying that people are spending more time at their seasonal residences, to say they're going to have different hours on the weekend, I think doesn't apply. I think really what it applies to is big noise and very, very, very obstructive noises. And so I think what we've already identified, marina equipment makes some sense to be allowed. So I think it's construction noise is that's my view anyway, the thing that we really need to deal with. Thank you.
All right, well, I'm going to get to that in a moment. So right now I'm trying to survey folks as to Saturday and or Sunday. Do you want more restricted hours? Like, for instance, right now, during the weekdays, after 7 o'clock in the morning, our noise bylaw does not apply.
I think what I'm saying is, I think it should be 7 days a week in terms of hand tools and individuals being allowed the same hours every day. Let's not make it complicated. I'm really focusing on the noisiest stuff. Thank you. Any
other comments on whether there should be tighter restrictions on Saturday and or Sunday? Councillor Hazelton.
Trying to reflect my community's input and disagreeing with Councillor Cooper a little bit. Having one set of rules for Monday to Friday, I think does make sense. Having different rules for the weekend, I think also makes sense. Adding a little bit more calm, if you will, into the weekend. And my community have offered up that, ability to make noise between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. Is something that they would support. That would be the human noise factor. And if we include hand tools in with human noise, then I think that would reflect their interests. And then at some point in time, I guess we'll come back further and you'll talk about heavy equipment or construction noise. And I certainly know that our community is focused on a ban of that on Sunday. So, reduced hours Monday through Friday, which I think you've already said 7 a.m. to, I'd prefer 9 p.m., but you want to go to 10. On a weekend, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. As the window of human noise with powered hand tools, and then a ban of construction noise on Sunday, with the exclusion of what Councillor Bochek was talking about.
All right. Any other comments on weekend restrictions. All right, what I'm going to say now, okay, just one other little survey is heavy.
Your Karina had her hand up.
Oh, sorry, Ms. King. Yeah, oh yes, that's right. It is there. Sorry.
Sorry. I just want to jump in here. I know we're talking about human noise and shortening those. I just want to remind everybody that that will come with more complaints, which will come with more enforcement. And I don't know what that will look like, whether that's something that our staff, so with the levels that we have, can maintain that. So I understand that we're looking to shorten those hours, and we'll go, I don't want to interrupt the surveying, and we want to get to a consensus. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that, because that is a concern of mine with, we have 2 students and myself who deal with noise stuff. So that would be an issue. If we're shortening those hours, people will complain and there will be issues. So I just want to make that clear while we're chatting about it.
Thank you. So my final survey is heavy construction equipment on Sunday. Restricted hours or 0 hours? That's my question to everyone. 0, I see 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm seeing I think I've seen a majority say 0 heavy construction equipment on Sunday. Is that correct?
As long as we exclude the constraints that Councillor Bocek has brought forward.
Okay. So where I'm at now, and is that the 7 o'clock start on the weekdays stays. I gotta give something to Ms. King just to start with here. There's no change there. There is 3 people want to go down to 9 o'clock at night. 2 people want to go to 10. 2 people want to go to 11. The compromise would be to change that 11 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night weekdays.
I could do it. That's fine.
Weekends, it's been suggested perhaps that we change the 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the morning so that people can't start quite as early on weekend mornings. And 9 o'clock at night. I know this is a much broader range than what Councillor Douglas has suggested, but other people don't want to make any change for weekends. So the compromise might be, as Councillor Hazelton suggested, 8 to 9 on Saturday and Sunday. That'll certainly interfere with Saturday night parties, but maybe that's the intent. Councillor Bocek, followed by Councillor Cooper.
Thank God this is a cow meeting so we can relax the rules a tiny bit. I'm not sure that the 8 o'clock, I'll tell you, I occasionally go up to the Cognition Church on Sunday mornings, and there's a guy with a chainsaw right next door. I can't even hear the sermon. He's out there with that chainsaw buzzing away during the sermon. So I understand, and I'm sympathetic to everybody with waterfront property, the way noise carries on the water and the disruptions that happen up there. And don't think, I don't want anybody to think that I'm not sympathetic because I'm not wanting to be a part of this restrictions. I understand it, but most of our constituents only get Saturday and Sunday to come up here. They're not here Monday to Friday. They're not as fortunate as us. And we start loading up bylaws where when they come up, they can't get their work done, and it's the only time they can get it done. We're going to have a lot of kickback from this. So I'll leave it at that, but I understand, and I realize all the emails I got from the people in Honey Harbor. I'm sympathetic to it, but I don't have a solution, and I don't think this is the solution. So I'll leave it at that. I think I've made myself very clear. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Douglas, followed by Councillor Cooper.
Well, I think I said the same thing earlier, and then I switched to let's do something on Saturday and Sunday. But on the other hand, Councillor Bocek again raises a good point, which I also raised earlier in this conversation, is the weekend is the time when people have a chance to do things. So maybe no change at all, and we're just going to have to think of another way to get to our community that just does not pay attention when it comes to the chainsaws, the leaf blowers, the consistent 4 hours of cutting lawns and leaf blowing on a weekend, opposed to the heavy construction end of it. I don't, that's not a big problem. The heavy construction is not a problem at all up in my area. Not that I'm aware of. I've not had anyone complain to me about that. It's more leaf blowing and lawnmowers that go for, and chainsaws for 4 and 5 hours. Well, the weekend's the only time they get to do all that stuff. So maybe we don't have a real solution to this. I don't know, but I think might as well just leave it the way it is at the rate we're going, to be honest.
Councillor Cooper.
And I certainly concur with the last two speakers, and I think let's keep it simple. I think and Karina has made a very good point to us that it's going to be very difficult for them to enforce a set of bylaws that are slightly different on the weekend than during the week. We do have people that come up on the weekends, and as far as the guy running the chainsaw at the church, he's doing it for a reason. He doesn't want the church to be there. It's very nasty, but it's the reality. And the minister has gone hoarse. No, I'm kidding, but it's really bad. So, you know, there are idiots around, let's put it that way. And that's life. But I really do think that if we could just keep it simple to the construction equipment, we might get somewhere.
Okay.
So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
You know, and I must admit, having been at this for over an hour, yes, over an hour, and not really coming up with consensus in spite of all my surveying, we might end up right where Ms. King started us. And that is no changes to the noise bylaw with the exception to be considered, and that is heavy construction equipment on Sunday. And so then my question to everybody, heavy construction equipment on Sunday, are we going to restrict that 12 to 4, or are we going to say 0? Okay, so here's what I'm going to dare do. I'm going to read a resolution. And then we're going to see whether there's any final comments before I call the vote. Hopefully not a lot. Moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve the noise bylaw amendment regarding Oak Bay Golf Course. And the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council adopt the noise bylaw amendment regarding heavy construction noise. Nope, Ms. Way, that I changed that word. Heavy construction noise to be prohibited on Sundays. Councillor Hazelton, followed by Councillor Jarvis.
What happened to your consensus of cutting off noise at 10 o'clock? Everybody voted for it.
No, not everybody voted for it. We had
Sorry. There was a compromise that you arrived at, but you omitted it. What happened?
Well, I got this exhaustion from people suggesting maybe we shouldn't be touching all these things except heavy construction noise.
Well,
okay, let's try this. All those in favor, Ms. Way.
Sorry, just to clarify, is heavy construction noise included already, or can we say regarding the definition of heavy construction noise to be prohibited? I'm just concerned if we're asking for Karina.
Yeah, so Karen, we need to amend the construction noise and construction and construction equipment definitions in order to differentiate between power tools and hand tools and then heavy machinery. In order to do that, so our resolution would have to show that.
And okay, hold on. Sorry, what are the terms?
Construction, it's just construction in brackets, and construction equipment. So those two would have to be changed to probably like a heavy equipment versus light. I'd have to look into it. I don't know what they would look like on offhand.
And that the definitions for construction and construction equipment be updated.
To include dogs.
Stephen, keep quiet, will you?
Okay.
Excuse me, that was the most constructive comments we've had so far in this debate.
Well, we're trying to end this debate. So I just want to do a very fast survey. All those in favor of and this is not calling for a vote, this is a survey, so I better not say all those in favor. Who would prefer the 11 o'clock changing to 10 o'clock?
9 o'clock. But
For what? For heavy
the end of-
equipment?
For the, no, for the end of day noise.
Right now, the noise bylaw says that you can make noise up until 11 at night. Who would prefer
Yeah.
that 7 days a week? Who would prefer that become 10?
Oh, you guys are so old. You guys are
6
so
days
old.
a week, isn't it?
No, we're doing the whole 7 days. We got rid of doing anything different on
Okay.
the weekend.
I got it.
Okay. All right, now do you want something in there to define heavy construction equipment? This is a cow meeting, not a council, so it's not the final vote. But you're hoping that this goes through the consent agenda next month? That's your hope?
I'm not looking for, yes, but not looking for council to define those things, but just that staff have direction to redefine
Yeah.
those
Okay.
things.
Yeah.
And then all noise be prohibited at 11, at 10. Every day, all
Councilor
noise.
Bocheck.
Every day.
Okay.
Councilor Bocheck. And then Ms.
Just
King.
to Karina's point, because I think we're getting close here. Heavy construction equipment does not include forklifts for taking boats out of stock and stores. It doesn't include tractors taking boats out of marinas. If you talk about construction heavy equipment, which you have two definitions for, and if you use them both, that I think will take care of what you're looking for. Marinas pulling boats in and out of water and using forklifts for stock and store is not construction equipment.
I think we would have to look at making an exemption for that piece for marinas. Because tractors under a construction equipment would be loud versus tractors pulling boats are loud, like they're the same equipment. So I don't know, we couldn't keep those out just to help marinas. I think it would be better probably to make an exemption for them, but that's something I'd have to look into and get guidance from to how to do that. And I know someone also mentioned construction yards so that they can, like Brian said, load up and do all those things. But then I don't know if we're defeating the point of changing anything if we're letting everybody, like those main big areas, do those things. And yeah.
Well, under the zoning, under the schedule of land usage in the zoning on commercial properties like my own, in my zoning, I have the ability to do what I do. So the bylaw, if it was put into place, would probably circumvent the zoning rights on my property. So that's why I'm staying out of this, but I'm certainly here to add my comments, but I would like to see everything stay the same. But if you're looking for an out for that construction equipment, that's not what's used at marinas.
Okay, let's see if we can't wrap this up. We know that we got moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends the Council approve the noise bylaw amendment regarding Oak Bay Golf Course, and that the Committee of the Whole recommends the Council adopt the noise bylaw amendment regarding regarding construction noise, that the definitions of construction and construction equipment be updated. Be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends the Council approve the noise bylaw amendment regarding, oh, you already got that part, sorry. And that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council adopt the noise bylaw amendment regarding construction noise to be prohibited on Sundays. And that the definition of construction the definitions of construction and construction equipment be updated, and that all noise be prohibited beginning at 10 p.m. every day of the week. That's what's in front of us at this point. And by the way, if we approve this, it doesn't mean we all have to approve it at council, even though we're optimistic that that will happen. So I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, that's a pass, and I'll make it 5. So we'll see. We have now approved that. Ms. King, I'm afraid we've given you a little more homework. Basically what we've done is we've restricted construction equipment on Sunday, heavy construction equipment, and we've modified the 11 o'clock to 10 o'clock as the recommended changes at this point, and otherwise the noise bylaw basically remains unchanged. Ms. King.
Maybe this is a question for Karen. I don't know how committee feels about it as well, but I was saying what these big changes, they might be controversial, as some of us have said. I don't know whether we have to put anything about a public meeting or whether you guys don't want to have a public meeting. I just wanted to flush that out while we're chatting about it.
Ms. Gunby, not that you'd be
Hello.
involved with the public meeting.
Yeah, so typically when a bylaw changes, there is a public meeting when it comes to like a zoning bylaw, that's a change in a bylaw. The budget bylaw, public meeting. So this should have a public meeting when it comes to council.
So it'll be part of the public portion of council next month. Yeah, that makes sense.
If it's ready by next month.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm optimistic. All right, I believe we voted for all that. I think we can say enough with the noise bylaw. And now we'll come down to something that's so straightforward, we won't have to have any discussion at all, and that's fireworks. Does anybody need a break before we get into fireworks? Okay, let's let the fireworks roll.
Okay, so as Mayor Kutzer said, I hope this is quick. Really, we just, from our discussion at last council or last committee meeting, I added the civic holiday because I had missed that. And we're changing it from you're allowed to have fireworks 2 days before and 1 day after the holidays that are listed. And I also added a sentence that staff can approve consumer firework exemption requests, because that's likely the majority, if not all of the requests that we may get, just to change those dates. So then that's something that we don't have to bring to council every time, but it remains the more serious commercial fireworks would be left with council, just in case there's some oddity that I haven't thought of that they might come to you for that. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, followed by Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Mayor Kutzer. And I think this reads pretty much what we discussed last time. The only thing, Karina, I would recommend is that it'd be nice if we had the boat check clause in there, which is under that category of getting a permit, so that on his birthday or at several weddings he has a year, that he could have his fireworks as a special occasion. Is there any reason that your department can't issue a permit for a special occasion?
So he could,
on one day?
So he could request an exemption through staff from the bylaw of those days. So for his son's birthday or his son's wedding, if that's what he wants, then he can go through an exemption through staff, and then you would be not breaking the bylaw to have that show.
So just to, sorry, Mayor, but just to clarify, because I think what we talked about initially was that this would apply to commercial operators that were putting on a fireworks display, let's say at 6 Mile Lake. We're not really just talking about that. We're saying we could issue a permit to somebody like Councillor Bochek for an event or whatever, a 1 day event. Is that correct?
Close, but so basically the commercial fireworks with a professional, they can do it any day of the year. They just have to go through the process that's in the bylaw and get approval from the fire department. And then, so for consumer fireworks, that's Joe Blow, that's Brian. If they want to have a day that's different from the days listed in the bylaw, 2 days before or 1 day after, then they just have to apply to staff and say, this is what I want to do it for. And then we could approve it that way.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to call it the Bochek bylaw. Thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I wasn't here for that discussion last month. So I'm just kind of curious. It seems to me that the biggest problem that I see is, how do I put this quite gently? Usually it's renters coming up from the city that it's all out. Like, I mean, they're up to have a great time. We see a lot of that with our rentals on Go Home Lake. We don't, generally speaking, have problems with the noise that I'm aware of, but fireworks, absolutely. It just seems like every weekend we've got fireworks going off. How does the staff deal with that kind of requests? I mean, how do you distinguish between Councillor Bochek's great birthday party and somebody else that's renting a property on a weekend basis or a weekly basis during the summer? Because I think that's where you're going to get lots of requests, because that's the biggest problems I'm personally seeing as a councillor and hearing complaints about. I think the staff will be overwhelmed. And is there any parameters for the staff? Because I wasn't here for the discussion, sorry.
not, so it would just be our discretion as to what, and I would suggest to be one of those things that if Brian asked for that exemption, I would say that he should inform his neighbors and those type of things. I don't know how that will look yet. We just wanted to make sure that not every of these requests were coming to council, so we were putting it to staff, and maybe that's something we can look into if other places have policies to follow, so we know how to handle that. We just haven't got there yet, I don't think.
Okay, thank you, because I will get questions about that, I'm sure. And I'm pretty sure the staff's going to be inundated from that perspective, if anybody even pays attention to it. But anyways, thank you for your answer.
Councillor Bocek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comments were going to actually aid Councillor Douglas' inquiry. I do like the fact that we're being left the ability to permit for fireworks, but to solve all the problems, I think it has to be the landowner, the registered landowner, that applies for the permit. That eliminates all the renters, all the boaters, all the campers, if you want to light off fireworks, the application has to be submitted by the resident.
I was going to say resident versus landowner, and I was thinking exactly the same thing, Councillor Bocek.
Yeah, I think that solves most of the problems. The only other problem that I have is, well, it's not a problem because Karina's addressed it. If we have somebody who wants to blow off fireworks because it's Ramadan, they can simply phone the township and say, I'm having my family up to my property. We're celebrating Ramadan. We'd like to let off fireworks between 9 and 10 o'clock. And you would issue a permit for that, I guess. So I think really this one, where I was totally against the bylaw, I think we've been able to discuss and come up with a formula that may meet the needs of most people in this township. And I think that's what we're here for. So that's my comments. I'm going to listen to everybody else.
Thank you. I see Miss King's hand coming out from her. Is that a notice board behind you or a cupboard or something? I'm not sure what it is.
There's a cover, or there's a, what's that called? Bulletin board behind me.
Yeah.
It looks fine to me, so I don't know what you guys are seeing, but so just to Brian's point there, in the bylaw, there's actually a stipulation that the property owner has to apply, like they would have to get property owner permission. So if that would take care of our rental situations. And obviously if I'm in contact with any rentals, just like I send them all the bylaws, this is going to be one of the top ones. And I want to work with Jen to put out lots of information about this one, because like Cynthia said, if they even know it exists, we hope to put it out a lot. So we, make some awareness about it, but that would take care of our rental situations.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis. Well, I saw Councillor Hazelton and followed by Councillor Jarvis, and let's do that for now.
Thank you, Mayor Coetzee. And I love seeing all these lovely electronic cans stuck up. Sadly, I don't have one available to me. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, but for some reason this time, this Zoom call, I don't. So I don't know how that works. But anyways, I did want to, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but perhaps you'll allow me the leeway. Karina was telling us how temporary permits would be issued in Honey Harbor. Then this doesn't relate to fireworks, it relates to noise, but in Honey Harbor, we have a Moonlight Madness, which typically goes till 1 o'clock in the morning. That happens almost every year. And I'm assuming from what I've heard that the community could request permission to make noise till 1 o'clock in the morning, one time a year, and that you could issue a permit to do that. Is that a reasonable conclusion?
So in the noise bylaw, there is an exemption process that we've gone through with Oak Bay for our lawnmowers. So it would have to come through council, but that's something that they could look for an exemption from the bylaw from, yeah.
So given that it's an annual event, we could do it once and then it would be a standing order?
We would have to put that probably in a schedule, but it would be something we can look at, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Jarvis, followed by Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, I appreciate this bylaw too. Karina, there's I think a small error in the bylaw 6.1 application to council. It just makes things not sound right, and that's why I'm bringing it to your attention. It's a small grammatical error. You say provisions of the bylaw with respect to the discharge of fireworks and council, and then you got a comma in there, which I think you want to take out. And council may refuse to grant any exemption. It's I believe it's within the first sentence of 6.1.
Yeah, I see it there. I can make that change. Thanks.
Finally, and then there's, for me, confusion within that same section. It says, the last sentence says, council may delegate the authority to provide an exemption to staff for consumer fireworks exemption requests. How and when would that occur?
So that, Karen, maybe you can help me. Council, so you're delegating the authority to me, staff, or someone in my role to provide that exemptions for Brian or whomever wants to do that on the off days for consumer firework requests. So that's how we would handle that.
Would that be how often when we, so an application would come to council, say from a private citizen to set off fireworks, and we would then at the council meeting say, okay, Corinne, you take care of this?
I would think you would just send it directly to me. And then if there was any issues, then you could go to you. Someone help me here.
Ms. Gunby.
Thank you. It's very possible it's just worded incorrectly, so it should state that council gives staff delegated authority, as opposed to staff will ask council every time for delegated authority. That defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
So the word may should be removed, basically.
Yes.
So council delegates the authority. Perfect. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Douglas.
Just a quick question for Corinna or staff. When we make some decisions on these, will this be on both the noise bylaw and, well, this encompasses the fireworks as well. Does this go out to all the cottage associations as a notification and an encouragement for them to let their membership know, which includes renters? Because I mean, when I was renting one of my cottages a number of years ago, that was really hammered into the contract, was about noise levels to decrease by 11 o'clock. No fireworks, no, zipping around in Sea-Doos in front of people's houses. I mean, but I think if that message doesn't get to the homeowners somehow, they're not actually going to put it in their contracts if they don't realize that they're liable for that or responsible for getting the permissions. Do we have some way of reaching out to these people, whether it be through the associations, or will this go to the associations on the change?
So I wouldn't think it would automatically go. As I said before, that's my goal, to work with Jen to make sure it does get out there so that it is in those contracts. It's all the homeowners know about it. That's my goal, is to really push it out through social media and do all of our things that we do. And Jen does her amazing thing. Then hopefully everyone can know about it that way, but it doesn't normally just go out on a circulation by any means, I don't think.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Chief Van Dam, did you want to add to the conversation?
I think Karine has hit it on the head, and when we, as the fire service, get invited to the cottage associations, we'll make it a point to discuss that as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Yeah, I wanted to be a broken record yet again. In Ward 4, there is no cottage association that reaches a majority of the properties in Ward 4. There are a collection of community stakeholder groups.
Councillor Douglas, sorry, Councillor Hazelton, you have made this statement, I think, 3 or 4 times today, so I think we understand that.
Well, we understand it, but Karina is working on a way of getting the message out, and I want to make sure that she understands that we have to work much more broadly. And so I know that it's a broken record for council, but I think it's important for Karina and staff to understand that if they think that they're going to communicate with the community, social media isn't going to be the answer, and communicating with one association is not going to be the answer. And enough of a broken record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have one question for Ms. King. I understand that the property owner can apply for an exemption for fireworks. My concern is, what if we have a property owner who's renting out their cottage who applies for an exemption every Saturday night of the summer? Then it kind of defeats the purpose because then every tenant of every weekend will have permission to light off fireworks the Saturday night.
I think that's where staff discretion needs to be used. I think it should be for those, like that's what the bylaw is enforcing, or we're putting it in to try and lessen the fireworks. Like if it's that wedding or that family reunion, that's to me where it should be saved for, is those special occasions. It shouldn't be every weekend, because that's not the point of putting the bylaw in, right? So I think that would just be have to, as case by case basis, staff have to make that decision that whether that's best for the community that surrounds that rental. And I hope that, you know, renters or rental owners wouldn't do that, because that, I don't think they love fireworks as much as we don't. So
Thank you. Councillor Bocheck.
Yeah, a special events permit, just not an events permit. You know, you can see when it's being abused. That's why we've delegated you the responsibility. You can see if there's abuse happening, and you can take care of it. The only other thing when it comes to the fireworks, did we have a start date for when this bylaw would be enacted? Because I think we found in the past sometimes we create bylaws and enact bylaws before we get the word out to people. So I'm just wondering if we can have a little, maybe between, say it gets ratified at council next month, which would be February. The first real onslaught of seasonal residents is the May 24th weekend. So that gives us a lot of time to reach out and inform everyone, because I would hate to see everybody come up and you know, you guys be out there running around writing tickets all weekend to people that didn't know what the changes were to the bylaw. So a grace period, I guess, just some time to get the word out, so we can enact this maybe May the 1st if we ratify it on February the whatever.
Ms. King.
yeah, so in order to, I need it to be enacted in order to get my set fines done with the Attorney General's office. So I would, if we put it in now, and then we'll just make sure, me and Jen will make our plan of attack for how we're going to get this message out, to be messaging when, like, start that messaging really heavy as they come. And obviously we would give a little bit of a education period, for lack of a better term, when we get those new people. If it's a new bylaw, it's just like anything, we try and educate first. So then we could have that, you know, unofficial grace period that we're going to make sure people are educated on the bylaw first. And then if their issues persist, then we can lay charges then.
Great. And a follow-up to that question would be, right now, our bylaws do not allow fireworks at any time during extreme fire ratings. My thought was, extreme means it hasn't rained in a couple of months. High means that things are dry and tinder. I'm just wondering if there's any reason while we're here to visit the fire department's fire rating to reduce the amount of fireworks during the dry season or the summer season. If there's any reason to do that, and perhaps I'm misleading everybody saying that you're not allowed to do fireworks at extreme levels, but you can at high, or is it anything above moderate?
Anything above moderate, you're not allowed to have fireworks. So high and extreme are prohibited. So we're good. Yeah.
They're way ahead of you.
Forget I even brought it up.
CO Gunby.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify for committee members that because this is committee, if it passes today, it's still not finalized and it has to go to council. So at the council meeting, when this comes back, council can then decide. So say it comes back in February, that you don't want it to take place until beginning of April. And that will give staff a couple months to get the word out there that yes, this changed, or this is a new bylaw in effect, and this is the date it's going to come into effect. So here's your 2-month notice or whatnot.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. And I think all this is great. Karina, I just suggest that we need to use all our communication tools, not just social media. That just doesn't necessarily work. Certainly not in my community. Thank you.
I'm going to rely on the expert to help me with that for sure.
Thank you. I have moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Bocheck. Be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve the fireworks bylaw. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is carried. Thank you. All right. We're now going into new business. The first item, which is the waste management update. Who is providing the waste management update?
Your worship,
Ms.
this
Lee.
was included on the agenda as was requested by Councillor Wienko in our December council meetings. So this is there if there is discussions to be had.
Okay, well, then I will give you a very brief update, and that is that, let's see when it is. Thursday afternoon, Ms. Gunby and I are meeting with a couple of people from district to listen to their ideas about what they would refer to their waste management strategy for the township of Georgian Bay. I'm not sure quite what we're going to hear, but they also understand, because we've made it very clear to them that I want them in front of council, and I'm hoping that'll happen in February, to discuss where they're at, and we can then discuss where we're at in our perspective, including the sharing of the Black Lion Consulting report and their assessment of the whole situation. So I'm hoping that this thing is going to start moving a lot faster. But that's my quick update at this point. And I know it's going to be her second last day, but I asked Ms. Gunby to participate just because of her, I'll call it corporate memory, which will be missed as of next week.
I could have said no, but I didn't.
I know,
just
and I
love
appreciate
garbage
that.
that much.
You'll miss that. There's a lot of things you're going to miss.
I don't know.
Councilor Rienko.
Yeah, I'm sorry I had to leave early yesterday. Well, leave yesterday afternoon. So I don't. If there was any discussion on waste management, I didn't hear it. So was there any discussion on that? And then
Well,
I have a question.
the final point in the Black Line consulting review, like 0.7 of the top 7 priorities, was looking at the solid waste management aspect for the township, and suggesting that we should try to make their suggestion was, and I hope I'm not summarizing this unfairly, that we should make a decision of what's going to happen before November 2022, because at that point the district was initiating a new service provider. That was one of the things they had in their report that they provided to us yesterday. Ms. Gunby.
Thank you. Just to add to that, they had a few recommendations, whether it be status quo or we do a shared service or we take it over, but none of those recommendations were actually in front of council. The recommendation that came from the report was that we conduct a sort of a study, a report ourselves, and not rely on the one that the district is doing. So that's why we decided to defer that until after we speak to the district on Thursday to see if that's really an option that they see is legal or viable before we can even go ahead with it and bring it back to your next meeting, which I think is February 1st.
Okay, can I add a few things and maybe you can bring up in your conversation next week?
Please.
I know we've talked about the idea of possibly going on our own, and I saw in the Black Line thing there that it might be more expensive. And I think you should, I don't know who you're talking to at the district, if you're going to be talking to the CAO or who are you going to be talking to, but I've been thinking about,
just for your
Sorry?
information, CO Stevens and Commissioner Yon, and I don't know if there's anyone else from the district.
Okay,
So
maybe one question you can ask, because I know we've talked about this idea about going on our own, and I was thinking, well, if we did go on our own, like, part of a good portion of our fee for waste is commonality of equipment, like equipment, staff, and facilities and so on. So we pay our share of that. And if we went on our own, of course, that kind of responsibility for those costs would be transferred to the other municipalities, I assume. So I like to find out, what would happen with those costs. And the other thing too is that, does district council have a say on going on our own? If we decided to go on our own, does district council have a vote on that? And I don't think district council would allow us to do it. I don't think, so just to find out the process of what's involved if we thought of going on our own, and what involvement district would have, and how the cost would be shared. And also, do we have to buy existing facilities if we want our own? Do we have to buy the transfer sites? Do we have to buy the waste depot sites? And the other thing too is that if we went on our own, there's only one company that has those small trucks that we use for our private roads. So we would be limited on who we could go with if we wanted to continue with private, small private trucks going down these private roads and so on. So I think there's still a lot of questions that I would want some answers for before we start talking about going on our own. So maybe you can get some feedback from Julie about what involvement or what decisions that district would have to make if we went on our own.
Ms. Gunby.
Thank you. So just to clarify for members of the committee, there's a bylaw that the district has that states that they are responsible for our waste. So they would have to amend that bylaw to remove that. So you're correct, Member Wiango, that they would have to have a discussion at their council table about that. When it comes to what company has what trucks, that's sort of down here or up here, and our discussion is still right here. So that's not something we're really looking at this very moment. We need to have, if anything, get the study done if we are going to do one ourselves, to make it Georgian Bay specific and not district specific, because I know that all members of council and most residents have the feeling that the report that's coming forward by the company the district has is not as focused on Georgian Bay as we expect it to be or as we think it should be. So it's likely in our best interest to do our own. And then from that report, our study, we can then branch out to see exactly what our options are based on that study and what comes back.
But if the district, if the district council has to vote on it, and they're going to end up paying more for waste because we're not paying our share anymore, so their costs are going up. I can't see them, supporting us going on our own. That's what, why spend all the money when we know or have a suspicion that council won't let us go on our own? So I think you get that issue resolved before you go too far down the road.
Well, I would counter that, Councillor Wienko, with if their costs are going up, then that means that we're paying more than our share. But I also think that actually their costs would go down because there would be one municipality they wouldn't have to serve anymore. Their overhead should go down as a consequence of that.
Yeah, but then we might have to buy the transfer sites and the waste depot sites, and they would be multi-millions of dollars.
If we were ever to go on our own, it would be a complex discussion. There's no question. Councillor Cooper.
Well, like many of you, I've given this a lot of thought, and I don't think we have the answers at the moment. And I'm fairly convinced myself that going on our own strictly is really an alternative. There is an alternative, however, to consider some sort of hybrid where we use district services and maybe not district services. And we already know that there are other municipalities, Lake of Bays, who just have transfer stations. So as an example, we could work with transfer stations and perhaps curbside pickup from the district. We buy that service, and there's nothing to stop us, I don't think, from doing that. We are obliged at the moment to acquire certain services from the district through the district for solid waste services. I don't think it says that we can't work on a hybrid. So I just wanted to make that point. And the other point is, for us to be able to do the work that we have to do, Mayor Kutzier and CAO Gunby, one of the pieces of information I've been trying to get, I've been on district council for 7 years, and I've tried to get financial data on the services that we get, very specific data. We still don't have it. We have very broad strokes, but it's not broken down in such a way that we can really examine the services we get. So in your meeting, if you can press for that kind of information, that would be very helpful in our follow-up analysis to have that information. So I would encourage that greatly. And I'm really convinced that we can work this out in such a way that there's no particularly poor feeling between us and the district. And as I say, I think a hybrid could be a way of doing this. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Mayor Coetzee. Just following up what Councillor Cooper was saying, I mean, for Paul's information, we did talk about yesterday, I think I had asked the same question, whether district was going to have to approve this. However, Councillor Cooper has a very good point. Perhaps there's a hybrid, if that is the case, that we could be looking at, as it seems like the other townships are working in such a fashion. The other thing, you know, Councillor Cooper, I just was thinking about something you were saying here. You have been asking for years for those breakdowns on the costs, and we have not gotten them yet. Do we not, maybe to Jessica, do we not have, or sorry, do we not have costs that we're paying out to the district that we know from our end? We obviously we're paying them, or is that part of an overall fee structure all encompassing something else that we don't have an actual breakdown?
I know that the district has sent us a few financial forms, but I know it's never been to the satisfaction of Councillor Cooper. And you know me, not a numbers person. I always thought it was fine.
So we do know what we're paying for the pickup of garbage every month or every year?
I can go
Can
through
I-
and see council what
can
I've
I
received,
answer
but I
that?
know the mayor has something. And I can also see, I don't know if Julie's on here. If she can, or
I mean,
Swift.
I will point out that they do offer some detail in the budget reports, and you can narrow it down to some degree. I've asked some very specific questions back in December. Ms. Stevens will be reminded of that Thursday morning. Because part of the trouble is accounting allocations. They put a whole bunch of costs into a pool, and then they allocate it based on assessment, or they allocate it based on addresses. And, you know, my question very specifically is, how can you explain that it's more costly to pick up from somebody door to door than it is to pick up a bin that serves hundreds of people? That's beyond my comprehension.
So we're just not getting that. We're paying out, but we don't really know what we're paying for, basically.
Yeah,
In a broad sense. I mean, we're not getting the details. It's just allocated as this is the fee. And we're not going to tell you exactly how many bins we're picking up or how many times we're going to the stations and blah, blah, which I think is absolutely ridiculous as a taxpayer. And I will concur with Councillor Cooper on this. He has been asking for years, and why district is not able to provide us. If I was a taxpayer, and I am, other taxpayers in this community that may not be paying attention as closely, but heck, I would be asking district, why are you not giving us those details so we can streamline that? It has been a long time that this question has come up, so I really agree that it needs to be pressed even harder with district, that we need some answers on this, because it's not satisfactory that we've been waiting this long without details anyways. For Thursday, my 2 cents.
yeah, I'm just going to say to you, it makes no sense that when over half our residents deliver the garbage to bins, they're not being picked up, they deliver the garbage to bins, why do we pay more per resident than any other resident in the district?
Because we're subsidizing other services.
If the post office decided that super boxes save the post office a lot of money, to me, bin sites are like super post office boxes. And then they talk about, well, bins, they require extra servicing. Well, yeah, but let's determine how many of those extra services are going to unsupervised sites versus sites on marinas and things like that. So the discussion is long and frustrating. But nonetheless, what we have to do is try to come up with a resolution that works for everybody, and we're not there yet. Councillor Hazelton, apparently I've been missing your hand. You have something to add to the conversation?
Oh, I just wanted to remind you that I don't have an electronic hand, and so your tally sheet needs to be active in tracking me. But anyways, I wanted to highlight a couple of things. Number one, we heard earlier that the district is planning a change in November 2022. November 2022 is not the deadline. They're going to be making and locking in all kinds of contracts long before that. And so I don't think I would be surprised if we don't have to have a decision on what we're going to do by June. So that's one thing that I think we want to revisit this. November is not the target deadline. Secondly, I want to highlight by example what we learned this morning. We have been dancing around this topic of floating house homes, etc. And we've been running around like chickens with our heads cut off, trying to figure out how to make sense of it. And we contracted out a very high profile lawyer who brought some very interesting information to us. And I'm going to suggest that we are at a point where we have been running around like chickens with our heads cut off on this waste management topic for years, not just the last 2 or 3 years, but as Councillor Cooper will help us understand, probably for 6 or 8 years. And I think that it's time for us to embrace the Blackline Consulting recommendation, which is you're never going to get a complete story of what your options are, what the paths of that you can exercise are, unless you go out and hire a consultant to put together the package and have that consultant do all the appropriate inspections of what the constraints might be at the district and other things. So, I do agree with the decision we made a couple of days ago, which is let's hold off on pulling that lever until after this meeting. But I think we want to learn from what we saw this morning. High profile lawyer, very skilled, making sense of chaos. And that's really where we're trying to go here on this waste management topic. Everybody knows a little, nobody knows a lot. And the only way we're going to get to a lot is to pay somebody to go off and do it. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Anybody else want to weigh in? Because I see Councillor Douglas wants to take a second shot at it. Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, I just want to make comment to something. Councillor Hazelton, that makes perfect sense. However, I think the very first question we have to find out is what I brought up yesterday and again brought up by Councillor Wianco today. What's our obligation to the district? How is that going to unfold? And I think from there we could probably, once we know that we have to play with them or we don't have to play with them, then we could probably move forward with the next step. But I think that whatever our constraints are going to be with the district first and getting that information, and then if we don't have to play ball with them, then let's plow ahead and find out our own thing. If we do have to play ball with them, then let's find out whether we can do a hybrid situation with them that's more cost effective.
Yeah, because I'm also concerned, further to Councillor Hazelton's point, we actually did pay a lot of money for a consultant because we paid a portion of the consultant that district hired, but we didn't really get a report. The report basically suggested that Councillor Cooper is 5 or 10 minutes away from a transfer station. That shows you how much they understood. And I'm sorry, I'm a broken record on that, but I'm so overwhelmed that that was pointed out to them. And when they gave us another report a year later, guess what? That wasn't changed. And that, yes, I will mention it again tomorrow on Thursday. And Ms. Gumby may remind me if I don't, but I doubt it. But anyway, Councilor Wianco, you started this.
At least we're moving forward. That's the whole idea. We weren't moving before. Now we're moving forward. But I like the idea, though, that you're going in on Thursday and to find out if we have any latitude to consider a hybrid or whatever, or do we have to play ball with the district and we have no choice? I think that's what we got to find out. If we have no choice, then we got to work with the district. But if we can do a hybrid, I have no problem with that, and I have no problem hiring our own consultant to look at a hybrid. But I think we got to find out how much latitude that we can get from the district on this whole thing. Yeah. Can we even think of going on our own? So that's what I want to come out of Thursday and bring that back in February, and then we'll come up with a plan. If we want to hire a consultant, then I'm all in for it.
All right. Well, I appreciate all this.
Mayor, Merrick, if I could just say, please get information, don't ask for permission. I think you need to be careful that
Yeah.
we're considering what you guys are doing for us. We're considering what our options are. And I don't think we want to be asking for permission. I think we need to be very careful about that because it's implying that we have no choices. And I think that's not correct.
Yeah.
We already know there are other municipalities that are getting different services from ours. The worst case scenario is we could do what Lake of Bays is doing and then do everything else on our own from there. So it'd be very simple to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. We've had a good conversation on this, and I personally appreciate the input. And I will definitely report back to everyone as to what we hear on Thursday, because I'm not sure if our CEO will report back to us on it.
I will not be available at your next meeting to report back to you on it. Sorry.
Yes, yes, yeah. And with that unpleasant thought, the next topic we have in front of us is launch ramp signage, courtesy of Councillor Bocek. Councillor Bocek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to keep this brief. I put this under new business because I think it's important. Our council has made its #1 priority the environment. And where I see the most damage to the environment is not in our forests or wetlands, it's on our lakes and waterways. So what I would like to do is ask council to consider giving direction to staff to bring back a report with the costs for printing and installation of educational signs at all marinas and all launch ramps within the township, stating the bylaw number and the text within the bylaw for dumping gray water into our waterways. It's a simple bylaw. It's on our records. And a sign at a launch ramp and the marinas will educate people that aren't from our township or maybe from our township and don't know our bylaws, simply stating the bylaw number. It is against the bylaw to dump your gray water in the waters within the township of Georgian Bay, whatever the legal part of it can be taken care of. And I'd like this to happen as soon as possible. So if we can fund it from reserve, because I don't think it's going to be that much. And if we can't, then I would like this added to the 2022-2023 budget. I can give more details of that. I have given a resolution through to our clerk that if council is in agreement to have staff bring back a report on the cost and the timing on this, that we could go through the resolution. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think it's a brilliant idea. I'm going to read the resolution so we know what we're talking about, and then we'll go from there. And of course, it'll be moved by Councillor Bocek and seconded by whoever Councillor Bocek wants to have seconded. Be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole requests staff to investigate the cost of printing and installation to post signs at all marinas and launch ramps within the township warning of gray water waste per bylaw 2008-091 clean yards. Is that how it actually reads? Ms. King.
I didn't add that part. That part was added by our staff. So there might be a little bit of a clerical error there. I'm not sure.
Ms. King?
I'm just looking for clarity because I have clean yards in front of me. Sewage is listed under industrial waste, and then it goes to sewage, which includes gray water, but there's nothing about dumping in the lakes or off boats. So I'm not
So
sure
this
whether we have the wrong bylaw number or if I'm
It
missing
could be the wrong
something.
bylaw number. This
I
morning,
don't
we
have
heard
another
from
bylaw.
our lawyer that we had a bylaw in place that prohibited dumping gray water. She was very specific of, oh, hold on. I didn't say that. But anyways, we do have a bylaw on the books. You know why I didn't say that.
No, I didn't hear a thing.
We do have a bylaw on the books which prohibits dumping gray water into the waters within the township of Georgian Bay. We know that for a fact because it was recited to us. So we just need to get the number and get the wording and get a cost of what this would cost to sign. So I'll butt out and let other councillors speak.
Well, I think maybe we just revise the bylaw at the end that both signs and installation of those signs at all marinas and launch ramps within township, advising the illegality of dumping gray water within our township boundaries or something to that effect. CO Gunby.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the resolution is corrected to state that be it resolved that committee of the whole recommends to council that they direct staff to do this.
Yeah, oh, yeah, technically. Yes, request council to request staff to investigate the cost of printing and installation. We're gonna go, the orders, I see all the hands here. So Councilors Douglas, Cooper, and Wienko, please. And Councilor Hazelton, I see your hand now, so I'll put you in the list as well.
Thank you, Mayor Coetzee. Okay, I think this is a great initiative and I fully support it. I'm just wondering if, I mean, maybe there's already something at our boat launches. I've never really noticed that there is, though. Something that I can't remember where it is, whether maybe out west. I saw it at boat launches everywhere. When you pull your boats out of the water to rid your propellers of invasive weeds such as milfoil, to go into bags, not to be thrown back into the lake, but to actually be put into like a garbage bag or something, to ensure that, you know, before you launch or when you come out, that there is no weeds attached. Because that obviously is part of the transfer problem of things like that. I don't know that we have something here. I have seen it in signs, but I've lived in too many places, so it could be from another country or it could be from out west. I don't know, but I think that's probably a good idea to do as well, because that is our biggest transfer of invasive weeds and so on. If I could just maybe add to what Councillor Bochek is proposing here.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Well, I'd like to commend Councillor Bochek with this initiative. I think it's very important. Sort of an addition to this, I think rather than just signs, we could also print off a one-pager very inexpensively on a sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11. And I would like to see that go to every marina, not just in the township of Georgian Bay, but most of the gray water, we have to remember, is coming from transient boaters that are coming from something like 2,500 or 3,000 slips over in Midland and Penetang. And if we can somehow distribute that one pager to those marinas, who and then could pass them out to their moorage customers, I think that would be fabulous, because that's really the high risk. Is I realize there are boats going in and out on launches, but the bigger boats with the bigger tanks that they empty are actually at marinas like South Bay, but there are a huge number of marinas over in Midland and Penetang. So I'd recommend that. And it's what I think Councillor Douglas is talking about. I think I've seen something like that, especially in the interior of British Columbia, because it does relate to milfoil and so on. And there's becoming a greater risk, I think, around milfoil in the Great Lakes now. So especially in shallow bays and so forth. And so that becomes a sort of a boater etiquette thing that could be included on the same sheet relatively easily. So I know I'm adding to the sort of content, but maybe there's a couple of points that could be on the same sheet. I don't know, but that's my suggestion, is that we need to get the message out to where the biggest sinners are, shall we say. Thank you.
Ms. King.
I'm just looking for more clarity as anyone have a bylaw number for what bylaw this is? Because clean yards wouldn't speak to that, and I haven't heard of that bylaw in my time here and doing that enforcement. I don't know, just for more clarification before we carry on too far.
Ms. Gunby.
Thank you. The reference to it came from Councillor Hazelton. And I've never heard of that bylaw either.
I will find it. I have found it in the past, and I will find it again and circulate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Chief Undum, were you, do you have your camera on because you wanted to speak to this?
So yes, Your Worship, there's a couple concerns I got forward. That is, we need to find out, even if we do have the jurisdiction to be able to create the bylaws, and if there is an existing one that's out there, whether it's enforceable by us or not. I know we've turned a few of some gray water in being dumped into the water in the past, and have turned it over to the MOE, believing that we do not have any jurisdiction out there. So as part of that, that's what's going to lead to that some investigations of whether we even have any authority to pass a bylaw for that. If it's on land dumping water into Georgian Bay, that is something that the municipality can do. But if it's the vessels that are out there, I don't believe we're going to have the authority, but I have to do some more work with that. I know I can't enforce the fire code out on vessels as well. So, and that was something we thought we could, and we learned that lesson the hard way.
Interesting. Thank you. Councillor Wienko.
Yeah, I was going to suggest if you do a bit more research on this, maybe talk to Boaters Ontario or whatever to do a bit more work on this. I have no problem against such a sign. We did have signs at all our launch areas throughout the township one time for invasive species, and that mainly was due with zebra mussel. But I think Eurasian milfoil was already in there. But those signs have long been stolen and disappeared and so on. And I think there's very few of them around now at boat launches. But for gray water, like, 6 Mile Lake, we don't have boats here, and there's no boats being launched that have a gray water, can produce gray water. So there may be a few marinas and boat launches that may not require this, but I can see this being basically on Georgian Bay and maybe on, well, obviously on Gloucester Pool, but some of the inland lakes I don't think require this information. But I think you need to do a bit more research on it and confirm that we do have authority over it.
Dr. Spilla.
Thank you, Mayor Kutsier. I believe that we've been advised by legal counsel that matters regarding gray water need to be referred to MECP. It's a provincial enforcement matter.
Councillor Hazelton.
I will find the bylaw and circulate it later. I am struggling to find it right now. I wanted to echo the comments that Councillor Cooper made. Perhaps not a one-pager, but perhaps a little bit more formalized multi-panel folder or flyer. And I think that although launch ramps, etc., are a good, reasonable source, I would say that the majority of the vessels that have the capability of dumping significant amounts of gray water are vessels that are launched on behalf of the owner by the marina, and the owner never goes near the launch ramp. And so having a flyer structure that highlights this and having it made available for every vessel in these liveaboard boat marinas, I think would have a very, very significant impact. And to the point we were talking about a second ago, certainly we want to confirm the enforceability of it. But maybe I heard things differently this morning, but I heard, sorry, I saw a nod of a head when I brought up the gray water bylaw that suggested that it was enforceable. And so once that is confirmed, then this would be a great path forward. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Bochuk, you want a second round at this?
Yeah, I figure it's mine, so I better stand up for it. Just to give you a little bit of insight, some of the councillors and some staff have been on my boat. I have one of those terrible liveaboard boats that have washrooms and showers and en suites and everything else. So when you buy your boat, you're given an instruction manual that says turn this lever, and as you do your dishes and have showers, it goes out the side of my boat. And that's as far as the government, the federal government's concerned, that's fine. You know, I and most responsible boaters close that valve, and we pay our marinas to pump out our gray water tanks. So adding to Mr. Hazelton and Mr. Cooper's comments, for the marinas to hand out a pamphlet, the benefits for them would be A, their basins are kept clean of gray water, and B, they can charge people to pump out their tanks. The whole purpose for the signage and everything was education. I understand the bylaw needs an enforcement element to this, because if they don't have their enforcement element, it's really not a bylaw. But my intent was to inform boaters that this practice is not appreciated in the township of Georgian Bay. If I'm doing the loop and I come up from Michigan, I have a whole different idea of what I can and can't do when I enter these waters. And the local government doesn't do anything about it. I think we have a great opportunity to educate our own boaters, visitors, transients, everybody. We just need to get the message out there. And I thought the signage would be a good idea, but obviously the signage and this resolution is pending on staff being able to come up with a bylaw that supports moving forward with this. So I think if staff comes back and says we have no bylaw, then I'm going to have to look at a different way, but we need to do something.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas, followed by Councillor Jarvis, please.
Well, thank you. I think you've hit the nail right on the head there, Brian, with Councillor Bochek with education. I mean, even if we aren't able at any point, just food for thought, to control the dumping of the gray water, if that is provincial, and to my knowledge it is at this point, I think there should be signage there that indicates the zebra mussels, the invasive weeds, whatever, the gray water. It does have an impact, because I can tell you, even on the inland lakes, if you have a sign of any sort that is big enough that is there when somebody is pulling their boat out or putting it in, or mostly pulling it out, you've got a lot of permanent residents, let's say, on the docks at that time, and it's almost like a shaming. It's kind of like there's a whole bunch of eyes on these, you know, boats coming out of the water, and they're kind of like looking at you like you aren't really going to open up that tank, or you are going to take those weeds off. So I think it's a really, you know, people that take responsibility for what they do will follow the, you know, the guidelines or the education, and we'll see, you know, point to it. That's one thing. The second part of that is, if we do have some sort of a bylaw, and I don't think we do, but I think that's something that I was trying to push for a number of years ago on this lake, because we did have some liveaboard boats on board, but we had no pump out station. If there's any way we can control that, whereas there is no liveaboard boats or boats that have holding tanks allowed on any inland lake that does not have a pump out station, that should be something else that we should be looking at for the environment. I don't know how you can have a liveaboard boat just arrive on a lake and stay for the entire summer without a pump out. They have to be dumping it somewhere. So just another point, maybe for another discussion, but along the same vein.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
I'm in agreement with Councillor Bochek's efforts here. And I think that if we can't find a bylaw, I bet you we could find a lawyer that can give us some other legal information that might be in line with things we've heard recently that would give us the ability to restrict what people can do with the gray water. I really am against, as other councillors have stated, the flushing of gray water into our lakes. It's terrible. So I would say let's move ahead with this. Education, if nothing else, it's a great idea. Make people aware of what's going on with their gray water, if nothing else. But I think that again, look for the bylaw. But if it's not there, I'm sure we can find a legal leg to stand on some other way.
Thank you. I mean, I have spoken many times that my great frustration with the fact that you can have somebody in a liveaboard boat in your bay, and their standards with regards to their gray water completely different than the cottagers who are on the land around that bay. I think we should all be living by the same standard, and I think that's very important. And so I'm hoping that I'm not sure exactly what resolution we should pass, but I would absolutely hope that staff would be able to advise us of whether or not we have a bylaw in regard to gray water that covers liveaboard boats, because we certainly have bylaws in regards to gray water for land-based residents. And I would hope that if we don't have it, that staff would find a way to help us create one for the lakes. And if we do have one, which I'm hopeful we do, or we have one that may need minor modification, that I think Councillor Bochek's suggestion of getting the word out that, oh, by the way, in our township, you're not allowed to dump your gray water except for with licensed pump out stations. It's like you and I who have septic tanks, we can't just pump that out onto our lawn when it gets a little full. We have to bring in the experts who have licenses to empty those tanks. The boat should be living by the same standards, in my opinion. And I imagine that a fair number of them do. I mean, I'm not trying to paint with a black brush all people with liveaboard boats, because I would imagine a fair portion of them get it. But it's very clear, based on the studies we've done on various anchorage bays in the past, that not every boater gets it. And I think we have to encourage every boater to get it. Now, we've been going back and forth a little bit on this resolution. And any resolution that we make would be direction to council to direct staff. But I don't know, with all the conversation back and forth, Ms. Way, if we want to go back to that original resolution with a little modification, you have a new suggestion, or what would you like?
Certainly, I did send you a quick chat message, but I think even just modifying the last little bit of it that says signs at all marinas and launch ramps within the township warning of the hazards of gray wastewater, or gray water waste, or gray wastewater. Sorry, I have my words.
Okay, so you're saying that
just,
that basically your suggestion at this point would be it resolved that the committee of the whole requests council to request staff to investigate the cost of printing and installation of post signs at all marinas and launch ramps within the township warning of the hazards of gray water waste. And that's not, I mean, that's part of what we want to do.
Yeah, I'll agree with the amendment to the resolution. If there is a bylaw, or if we can create a bylaw, if there's some way to have, I don't know, when I park in a spot that says there's a bylaw that says I can't park there, I back out. Right? It's just the
This kid's so proud of you.
Just the fear of getting hassled by a bylaw officer. The education is everything. I encourage every one of you counselors to go down to Honey Harbor, whether in Churches Bay or at the boat club at dinner time, when people are doing their dishes, and watch that 1-inch hole on the side of their boat. Because at 7 o'clock every night, when I walk down my big slip, I see it. It's coming right out the side of the boats, and it makes me throw up every time I see it.
So you don't want to do this at dinner time then?
No.
Well, can we?
So I think that's a good. I think that's a good amendment to the resolution.
And
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
maybe if I want to make a suggestion, if I may, that we have it, we're posting signs within the township warning the hazard of gray water and water waste, and further that committee of the whole requests the council to request staff to investigate the bylaws in regards to wastewater, gray water dumping in our water, in our lakes, in our water bodies.
That covers it.
Councillor Cooper.
So that's the launch ramps. What about the marinas?
It says here, post signs at all marinas and launch ramps.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
so-
all marinas have launch ramps, Peter. But the resolution says all marinas and launch ramps, but all marinas do have launch ramps. And with your addition of the paper handouts, I think we can absolutely inform everyone.
Well, my point is that at the beginning of the year in May, the boats go in the water in many of these marinas, South Bay and so forth, Paragon, and they come out in the end of September, and they haven't gone up and down the launch ramp. So I'm just simply saying, from an educational perspective, we'd be great if we could get a pamphlet to each one of the boaters. There's hundreds of those boats that never go in and out of a launch ramp, and they have vast volumes of waters, or gray water, so, and sometimes black water.
Yeah, and my reason for the launch ramps was a lot of times a 22-foot boat will have a sink and a toilet in it, and they get launched every day. People come up from the city, launch them at the park over here, and I watch them when they come out. I know what they do. So there is transient boats that go in and out daily that do have gray water outputs, and so the launch ramps was a target for me. But yeah, the backup of written literature. Maybe the marinas decide they want it right on the entrance to their slips instead of the launch ramp. You know, marinas could make that decision as well.
That'd be great. And I'm just trying to encourage that we get at, of course, I agree with your initiative. I'm just saying it would be really helpful for those thousands of boats that go in the spring and come out in the fall, that we get a message to them. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Clerk Way.
What about the addition of, I don't know if you just want to be printing and installation to post signs and other materials, or
Pamphlets. We could say pamphlets, for example.
communications. Yeah, printing and communications and installation to post signs.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, put in a couple extra words. I think the intent is very clear. And if council is so particular next month to want to make changes to it, so be it.
okay.
But I think the intent is very clear, and I applaud it.
Yeah,
Okay.
today's to get it in front of council, because I think I echo the sentiment of most of council, and I know if it gets there, we'll get some action. So that's why I've asked for it at the cow today.
No, I think it's brilliant.
So can I just verify that I have what you have, your worship?
Let's do it.
Okay. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole recommends to council to request staff to investigate the costs of printing communications and installation to post signs at all marinas and launch ramps within the township, warning of the hazards of gray water waste. And that Committee of the Whole recommends to council for staff to investigate bylaws to regulate the dumping of gray water waste.
All those in favor?
Oh, you need to move a seconder, sorry.
Oh, Councillor Jarvis has his hand up, so make him the seconder, whether he likes it or not. So moved by Councillor Bocek, second by Councillor Jarvis. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Well done. Maybe I should get Clerk Way to read the resolutions all the time. Might be more efficient. I think that's it for our meetings of yesterday and today. I think we've covered everything, have we not? So I'm
Sure, we can't
there.
find something else to talk about?
Well, you know, we could have passed a resolution extending past 4:30, but I don't know about you. But, I think we've done enough the last 2 days, and I happen to think in the last 2 days we actually covered a lot of important material. I'm going to dare say it both inside and outside of close, but I'm not going to talk about closed, obviously. Other than that, I think there was important material there. I think yesterday we covered a lot of important material as well. That these have been good meetings, and I appreciate that a fair portion of what we discussed yesterday and today were what I consider big picture items, and I think that's where we contribute the greatest value to our community when we look at the bigger picture. But with that opinion, I have moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved, actually, am I going one? I'm getting ahead of myself. No, I don't think so. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole does now adjourn at 4:12 p.m. to reconvene on February 15th, 2022, or at the call of the chair. All those, oh, Councillor Hazelton.
Just before we exit,
Yes.
I wanted to report success. Bylaw 95-78, being a bylaw to regulate the dumping of gray water into the waters of Georgian Bay. It exists I will circulate.
That's a quarter century ago. Just saying.
I know, but my filing system isn't organized
Just
effectively.
think how much gray water has been flushed since then.
Yeah.
I was going to say, there's a reason why they put caution hot on McDonald's coffee, because something bad happened. So what happened then that made this bylaw come into effect?
Well, what happened then was we had Frank Spangenberg, who was driving council to take bold action on matters that were important then. And I'm delighted that Councillor Bocek is picking up on this today and helping us drive this thing forward. And sorry for interrupting your wrap-up session, Councillor, or Mayor Kutzler.
Well, we didn't get anywhere near 4:30, so we don't get in a lot of trouble with our clerk. But now I'll say there's now adjourned at 4:13 p.m. All those in favor? And that is carried. And council, we are done with our regular meetings of this month, though we have a meeting now, I believe, February 1st at 9 o'clock is our next scheduled meeting together as a special council meeting. And I think that's a special closed meeting, if my understanding of the whole thing is correct. Councillor Bocek? I can even call you Brian now, can't I? Because we're.
Yeah, you can, Ruff.